Hello, Jonathan. Good morning. Alright, so when you participated on Britain's Got Talent at the age of 17, you received a lot of attention. When you discovered you had that voice, how old do you believe you were? On the 2012 season of Britain's Got Talent, a 17-year-old kid stunned everyone. Jonathan Antoine's voice was magical. Although he was well known, he spent 28 years in seclusion. At the age of 4, he was the target of bullying. Children flung snacks at him. His professors discovered him sobbing alone. Then they received the news that made all the difference. Jonathan's weight and shyness weren't the only issues. Furthermore, it clarified why he had always felt so strange. When he eventually tells you the truth, you will cry. Jonathan Antoine was born in Chigwell, Essex, on January 13, 1995. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, back to the topic. What we were talking about was. It appeared to be a peaceful, pleasant location to grow up from the outside. But in his world, things were different. Jonathan's musical talent was remarkable from an early age. By the age of 6, he had perfect pitch, which is something that only roughly 10,000 people had. But his gift was so uncommon that no one took much notice of him. Instead, Jonathan spent his school days being teased so severely that his teachers frequently saw him sobbing by himself. To relax, he would hum lengthy songs. He would secretly compose entire songs in his mind during difficult times, according to his mother Julie. Even though he was displaying signs of sorrow by the age of 8, his brain was doing something really wonderful. After only one hearing, he was able to recall every detail of an opera. Ultimately, medical professionals diagnosed him with a form of musical savant syndrome, which affects less than 1 person out of every 1,000. He struggled with his weight even before then. Food was the only thing that helped him feel better when he was just 4 years old. He was already 40 pounds overweight at the age of 5. By the time he was 6, he weighed 95 pounds, more than twice the average weight of children his age. Children shouted him derogatory names and tossed food at him at lunch. And he ate more to feel better the more they teased him. When Jonathan was 10 years old, he weighed 154 pounds. His mother did everything within her power. To pay for therapy, she took out 2 mortgages on their home, but it didn't help. Later, medical professionals diagnosed him with trauma-induced hyperphagia, a disorder that causes bullied children to put on a lot of weight. Just 2% of children who have been bullied suffer from this disorder. When his voice was heard, nobody was prepared. Mrs. Williams, who was substituting as a music instructor, was holding another choir audition when he was 10 years old. When Jonathan talked, everyone heard something that didn't seem genuine. He made an effort to blend in with the other children. He had the clear, powerful voice of an adult tenor. Mrs. Williams concluded that it sounded as though Pavarotti was trapped in a child's body. After listening to the initial tape, it was discovered that Jonathan's voice could reach a frequency range that most children cannot. Even worse, he had vibrato by nature, something that singers often spend 20 years honing. He was doing adult solos in a matter of weeks. A small speaker wasn't necessary for him. His voice might have filled a 2,000-person hall because it was 95 dB loud. Ultimately, that moment was recognized as one of the most significant discoveries in British music education history. At the age of 15, Jonathan attended the Stratford and East London Music Festival. He weighed 298 pounds and was little over 5 feet tall. He went up against 47 other vocalists, many of whom had years of professional training. Victoria Sterling, a 17-year-old singer who had previously performed at the Royal Opera House, was his principal opponent. "O Sol Mio" was the song Jonathan chose to sing. By the time he finished, a room designed for 1,200 people was occupied by nearly 2,000 people. For about 4 minutes, the audience stood up and cheered for him. One of the judges, Sir David Wilcox, gave him the highest score of any competitor at the event, 98 out of 100. He was offered a £2,500 prize and the opportunity to record it. That wasn't all, though. For the first time, he was applauded rather than made fun of. In the same year, he was admitted to the Royal Academy of Music's junior program. That wasn't usually the case. Only 23 of the more than 2,800 candidates were chosen. Jonathan was so anxious that he had to throw up twice before his test, but it went quite well. His voice sounded like that of a 25-year-old with training, according to his teacher. The school used to charge almost £8,000 a year, but they stopped charging after his mother explained how difficult it was for them to pay. Jonathan's Saturdays were occupied with training. 6 hours of singing technique instruction, 4 hours of theory instruction, and 2 hours of performance instruction are all included. Because of his appearance, the other pupils first ignored him. However, 3 months later, he was chosen to play the lead in the magic flute, becoming the youngest person to do so in the school's lengthy history. In 2011, Jonathan's high school music instructor, Jennifer Ewington, had to make a significant decision. This marked the beginning of many changes. Even at the age of 17, Jonathan weighed more than 20 stones. She paired him with 16-year-old Charlotte Giaconelli. Jonathan wasn't confident, but Charlotte was. She had been performing since she was 8 years old and liked being on stage. Jenny didn't guess. Charlotte was picked because she was aware that Jonathan's strong but reserved voice would complement her powerful stage presence. Their debut duet, The Prayer, was performed in front of just 15 classmates. Despite the small size of the space, Jen knew she had discovered something unique. Charlotte and Jonathan couldn't have been more dissimilar. He avoided people and spent hours each day practicing opera. By the time she was 16, she had been in over 30 shows. She liked performing on stage. However, their voices blended in a distinctive way when they sang together. Jonathan's voice was high, ranging from C3 to C5. Charlotte's high voice changed from AC4 to AC6. According to a music producer who listened to their early recordings, they are unique vocalists who complement each other. Behind the scenes, however, things weren't always simple. Jonathan needed constant prodding from Charlotte. Before practices, when he was experiencing a panic attack, he would hide in the school restroom. She would locate him, tend to his needs, and return him to the music room. They began singing at local gatherings as a way to boost their self-esteem. Between February and April of 2012, they performed in 23 locations, including bars, churches, retirement communities, and celebrations. Their first paid job was at a local church for an Easter service. They each earned £50. They then performed for 200 people at a charity dinner at the Epping Forest Country Club, which was a huge moment. After 5 minutes of standing ovations, talent representatives immediately went to speak with them. By April, they were earning £300 per show, and there were 40 additional spots on the waiting list. The Prayer was always their primary song, but they now played 15 tunes. Jonathan prepared himself for the next phase of these small shows. They were persuaded to try out for Britain's Got Talent by Charlotte. When she first heard about the tests in March 2012, Jonathan first refused. He didn't want to be ridiculed for his appearance on national television. The young woman persisted. She requested 3 weeks. If he didn't agree, she even offered to try out alone. She submitted their application just 13 minutes prior to the deadline. Her room is where the video was shot. Jonathan appeared frightened and was not shown for very long. When the directors called, they just wanted Charlotte, but she stated that it was either both or neither. The test was scheduled for April 28 at the London Palladium. To make sure Jonathan wouldn't back out, Charlotte spent the previous evening at his place. Even the bus was a new experience for Jonathan. Antoine had no idea how his life would alter when he competed on Britain's Got Talent in 2012. He was just 17 years old. His hair was all over the place, and he was dressed in a simple t-shirt. He didn't resemble the artists that typically won over the judges. What followed would stun millions of people. Simon Cowell shouted something hurtful to Carmen Electra, a judge, before Jonathan even performed a song. It was awful, and he was heard on tape saying, "Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse." And Jonathan's appearance was the only reason. Jonathan, however, was prepared. One of the most iconic pre-performance footage in BGT history was when he declared, "I don't look like a normal performer. I just went out there in my normal clothes." Then, The Prayer started playing. A powerful duet sung by Celine Dion and Andrea Bocelli became popular. Jonathan had no say in the matter. His music teacher, Jeanette Brown, requested him and his singing partner, Charlotte Giaconelli, to perform it at her wedding. The entire room was transformed by Jonathan's singing. In a matter of seconds, the audience stood up. Tears were shed. Simon Cowell was incredulous. All 4 judges gave them a yes. It was not only a good concert. It was a significant advancement. Everyone was even more astonished by Simon's subsequent actions. Jonathan was being compared to Luciano Pavarotti by someone who had just made fun of him. Experts concurred with his assessment that, "You're a future star." Already, Jonathan's voice sounded older than his actual age. He was compared to someone twice his age in strength and control. The performance instantly went viral. The audition tape was posted on March 24, 2012. In a matter of weeks, it surpassed 2.6 million hits. It was soon the most watched TV audition in the world. The word got throughout the globe. There were many who began to compare Jonathan to Susan Boyle. Pastor Vi Boscombe and other church officials shared the video and praised it as a fantastic tale. Jonathan's journey from being teased as a teenager to becoming a global celebrity happened quite swiftly. However, his journey wasn't simple. Jonathan had a terrible past. Because he weighed 280 pounds, he was teased for years. He once isolated himself at school because he was so upset. His mother, Tracy, claimed that he would never leave the house and would hide under a large sweater. Therefore, his appearance on the BGT stage was more than just a performance. It was successful. The pressure was still increasing. In order to remain composed throughout the semi-finals, Jonathan had to combat his anxiety. Charlotte was afraid, too. However, Jonathan had discovered that deep breathing was a useful technique for calming down. He had to sit down before he could sing in order to maintain his balance. Once more, the audience adored their rendition of Caruso. At the time, Simon Cowell even declared them to be his favorite act in the entire show. There was still more problems. When Simon advised Jonathan to leave Charlotte and go alone, everyone was taken aback. Jonathan never gave it a second thought. "We've come on here as a duo, and we're going to stay here as a duo," he repeated after saying no. After that, he became much more admired. They were devastated by the outcome, since they had hoped to win the final. Ashley Butler and her dog, Pudsey, won with 39% of the vote. Jonathan and Charlotte came in second with 25.8%. It was quite unexpected. Their pals were depressed. Many people now prioritize their popularity over their skill. Cowell, Simon, didn't linger. The following day, Jonathan and Charlotte signed a record-breaking £11 million pact. Their debut album, Together, was released in September of that year and reached the top 10 on the UK album chart. Simon arranged for the release to coincide with the X Factor's live performances. He was aware that they needed to move fast while people were still pondering their greatness. Jonathan was taken aback. "I'm still pinching myself that we are actually making our own CD," he stated to me. They were well known due to the songs on the album, such as The Prayer and Caruso. Over 250,000 copies were sold. Their record was magnificent, just as Simon had predicted. They released Perhaps Love, their second album, a year later. On October 14, 2013, it was released. Like their debut single, it peaked at number 5 on the UK chart. Now, however, something had changed. The record featured more contemporary renditions of classical songs in addition to traditional ones. That alteration revealed a more serious issue. Jonathan's needs were different from Charlotte's. Jonathan enjoyed serious classical music and opera. Charlotte preferred more contemporary styles including musical theater. They were unable to deny their differences any longer. For many years, Jonathan had been studying traditional music. In 2010, he also took home the Young Musician of the Year award at a local event. Charlotte, however, had previously visited the theater. Despite the success of their second album, they were struggling behind the scenes. In early 2014, they announced that they will be parting ways. They both made an effort to remain evil. They issued a joint statement saying, "We're excited to be going back to the studio to record." However, others close to the group claimed that they split up following months of disagreements about songs and the group's artistic direction. Jonathan had also been exhausted by going on tour. In the first place, his health wasn't very good. His weight and confidence had always been issues for him in the past. According to his mother, he refused to leave the house before BGT. He was driven to the brink by the pressure of interviews, performances, and post-show public appearances. Jonathan started experiencing panic attacks. Jonathan and Julie collaborated for 2 years. Over 250,000 of their records were sold. Together, their debut album peaked at number 5 in the UK. However, supporters were taken aback in February 2014. An internet post appeared. The two were split up. Behind the scenes, Sony had made them an unprecedented offer, separate contracts for both of them simultaneously. That type of offer is almost never made. Charlotte's record would be released in June, and Jonathan's in October. The unified statement attempted to improve the situation. They had gone through a lot together since they first met in high school in 2006. However, it was evident that they were rapidly diverging. Things really changed when they met with Sony to plan their third album. They disagreed on everything, according to Charlotte's later statement. Not the music, the atmosphere, or even the image. Jonathan was interested in the background of singing. Musical theater was something Charlotte was interested in. A true division existed. After a month, Sony said, "Why not go solo?" in response to this. Charlotte was on the go. In July 2014, her debut solo album, Solitaire, was released. Additionally, she has performed in her first professional theatre production at London's Landor Theatre by February 2015. She played Amalia Balash in an old Broadway production of She Loves Me. The show ran from February 4th to March 7th. For her, this was more than a job change. It was a real change. She finally adored performing live on stage every night. Jonathan had a completely different journey. He didn't leap in with assurance. He was afraid. Being only 19, he wasn't sure if he could accomplish it alone. The one who had always performed well on stage was Charlotte. She gave him courage. Now he had to discover it himself. They were extremely successful. 200,000 records have been sold worldwide. A place in the Billboard Latin crossover charts top 10. People were crushed by what they anticipated. He stepped backward. He exercised. He improved. He attempted to remember why he was initially drawn to music. The split was disliked by the fans. The headlines were cruel. It hurt when someone stated, "She dumps him." People have fallen in love with one another because of them. They were unwilling to let go. The solo deals were supported by certain industry professionals. It was deemed premature by some. Perhaps Love, their second album, was released in the United States in October 2013. It felt like the beginning rather than the end. Jonathan wasn't finished yet, though. Tenore, a serious opera with 12 classical tracks, was released in October 2014. According to the official charts, the album was the top classical musician record. At the age of 19, he became the youngest tenor to ever reach the top of that list. Even weirder is the fact that the album peaked at number 13 on the UK pop chart. This was a significant advancement. He was ruling, not merely surviving alone. One event in particular stood out that year. Jonathan was invited to play with Placido Domingo, regarded as one of the greatest tenors of all time, at the London iTunes Festival. It was evident that Jonathan had arrived, and there was respect. Beginning work on a complete concept record in 2020 was the riskiest thing Jonathan had ever done. On June 5, the film Going the Distance was released. Greg Field, a Grammy winner, spent 3 years directing a project with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. It was more than a mere record. The story was given in 3 sections and was based on Jonathan's actual travels. It was his first time singing Nessun Dorma. The aria that brought Pavarotti fame was this one. To cap it all off, PBS aired a performance special on March 15. Choir and orchestra in full swing. By the time he was 25, Jonathan had developed into the artist that everyone had only imagined he could be. In 2024, he stunned everyone once more. By request. The Diane Warren Songbook 1 contains 8 songs and has a total duration of 33 minutes. A collaboration with one of the biggest pop music stars, Diane Warren. She has composed music for Lady Gaga, David Bowie, Aerosmith, and now Jonathan. Jonathan Antoine appeared on Britain's Got Talent in 2012. He was just 17 years old. Modest, plump, and nervously unsteady. No one could see what was about to happen. His voice startled everyone. He was not just a singer. He took to the skies. That one show transformed his entire life. However, the onlookers never realized how bewildered he was or how difficult it was for him to struggle for years by himself. And it would be over a decade before the truth was revealed. Remember to hit the bell, like, and subscribe to receive the most recent updates on Jonathan's incredible journey. Join us for more heartwarming tales and stay in contact.